Hi, I'm Somer Hackley,
Hi, I'm Zen Mac. This is the Art of Search Hiring Manager series.
and these are stories and insights about all things hiring. Well, Zen, it is so good to see you again today. Thank you for
Pleasure.
joining me this week. Okay, so today I would love to introduce you to our guest, Sudeep Gautam, EVP, Chief Technology and Digital Officer at Upbound. So I've known Sudeep for years, and I can personally attest he's an excellent hiring manager and partner to his counterparts in recruiting and in HR. And what I've seen set Sudeep apart is he's very clear with what he's looking for, how to assess for it, and honestly, just how to run a great, smooth hiring process. And I always respect leaders who push me to think differently throughout the course of a search and how to think differently about talent. And I can tell you every time that Sudeep and I chat, I learn something new and he pushes me. And I just absolutely love that. So I appreciate the partnership and the mutual learning. So in terms of his background, just a little bit about him. So Sudeep is the Chief Technology and Digital Officer at Upbound. So that includes brands such as Rent-A-Center and Acima and others. He is a recognized industry expert specializing in large-scale digital transformations. He possesses a rare combination of experience, including C-suite leadership at Fortune 50 companies, private equity, and extensive experience in a global technology as a global technology leader in the consulting and IT services industry, including full P&L management. Well, Sudeep, it is so great to see you here today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Somer. Always a pleasure.
Well, very nice to meet you, Sudeep. Your leadership team is renowned for its diversity. So, can you walk us through your approach to hiring? What specific qualities do you typically attribute, or attributes that you look for when you seek out talent? How do you assess these qualities in the hiring process? And then there's a part two of this question, which is how has that approach contributed to the diversity of your team?
Yeah, hi, Zen. Great to meet you as well. It's a great question, right? I mean, and sometimes I have to be a little careful about this because the approach to hiring and that philosophy would change depending on when you're trying to hire the individual, at which part of your own, duration or your particular time within that organization is when you're trying to hire these individuals or individual, and that could make a difference. So, for example, if I were to take that I've recently joined an organization and I really want to hire someone or hire a new team or at least key members of my future team, then there are probably a couple of areas which I really try to focus on from a philosophical perspective, from an approach perspective, right? The first thing is that when you've come in with a certain set of expectations that your boss, your management team, your peers said they have of you, right? That means you come at a level which is a high standard, which is why they've had to go outside and get someone like you in.
Mhm.
So that kind of translates because that momentum has to flow. So which means when you are hiring someone under you, then you also have to make sure that that same set of expectations, the wow factor, the setting the bar high to this is what you should be expecting in this kind of a role or in this function. I think that's extremely important to set that right, right? So that's the first thing which I kind of always think about is that you got to get a heavy hitter. You got a heavy hitter who can set the bar high because this is how work should be done. That's one. The second thing I would say is that I always think about it that, look, whoever you hire, will in a way decide your future, or the team that you hire is going to decide your future and the efficacy of your contribution to a company. Because if your teams, I'm always a firm believer that if you don't have the right team working for you, you're not going to get any of your job done.
Mhm.
No work's going to be done in the fashion that it's got to be done. And for that, the only way is to have a great team working for you. People say all this, but very few people actually implement it. And I've had experience in the past where I've not hired good people, and I myself have stumbled and failed in certain areas of projects where I just did not have the right team working for me, and I did not probably do a good job delegating either. So it's important to understand that whoever you're getting in has to make you successful, right? While of course making themselves successful too. The third thing from that approach is that, can this person really make a difference, right? So get in someone who can really make a difference to the role, to the company, to the level of contribution, or to the standard of the contribution you're expecting. It's got to be dramatically different from what the company's seen before. Otherwise, what's the point of going out and getting someone? You got to get someone not just who thinks outside the box, but can dramatically transform the way people see that role being functioned in the past. So that's kind of my broad or overall approach in terms of, the the hiring philosophy. And in terms of the qualities and the diversity piece of it, right? The three specific qualities I look at. The first thing is that I need someone with a kind of an entrepreneurial mindset, which means they should have built something. They should have had the pains of creating something. I'm not saying going and hiring a startup founder, or it's not that, but someone even within a large organization has built something, has incubated something, has had the pains of working with constraints, right? It teaches a lot, because these people then are very conscious about and frugal about how they spend their budgets, right? And they know the pains of building something great. And they also know the failure rate. They know what it is to fail and quickly get up and perform. So I think that is the first thing which I look for. The second thing in terms of quality is that, has this person handled scale? Because even though you have the entrepreneurial attitude behind it, the question is that we're all working for large companies, and whether it's a mid-sized, small, large company, doesn't matter. We're always looking at growth. And when you look at growth, which is so important for any organization, then it's key to make sure that you have someone who can handle that growth and has handled that kind of scale in the past. And finally, I think what is important is that the ability to articulate. There are people who've done great stuff, but they just cannot articulate. Right? They cannot articulate the way. I mean, and I keep reading this elsewhere, and I keep hearing it, that your strategy is only as good as you can articulate it. So if someone who cannot articulate what they have done, how they've done it, why are they doing it, and why have they done it in the past like this, then they're not going to be able to justify any of their actions, however good they are. So I need not just a communicator, but someone who can articulate well. So these are three, I would say, qualities and attributes that I look for in an individual. The diversity part of it happens because I always ensure there are diverse candidates in the pool. The skills and the qualities are table stakes. So it doesn't matter, the diversity is important, but the table stakes are that they are all capable individuals. So if you include a good set of diverse candidates within your interview mix, then I'm always sure that that slot will always get filled, so that's good from the way I look at it. So I make sure there's always a good set of diverse candidates when I'm interviewing them.
Well, thank you for that. Could you share a story about a time when you or your team faced a particularly challenging hiring situation, like how you've navigated through that and made a successful hire?
Yeah, I'll talk about two instances very quickly, right? I mean, one instance is, my team did not face they did not face a challenging situation in terms of hiring, but I faced it. They were actually pretty united in who they wanted to hire, and I, for some reason, did not like the candidate. Right? So I flip that aside, because that's a unique situation sometimes. And this was a person that we were going to hire that was not going to report to me, right? But it was going to report to one of my direct reports. And I somehow wasn't very thrilled with, the resume, and the general profile of the candidate, right? It was okay. The person was okay, but my team and the people who have already interviewed the candidate were like gung-ho on it. But for me, I was looking for something very specific because we were replacing something in the company, a position, a similar role in the company. And I just wanted to make sure that is this person getting that wow factor in, right, of how something should be. And I just felt that this based on the paper or the resume that I saw, it just didn't fit the bill, in my opinion. Nevertheless, I kind of gave in to the team, and if that's how they wanted to go, then I said, okay, fine. But I just want to caution them that these are my reservations. But interestingly, a couple of months of that person functioning and me spending some time with that person and understanding their vision and their plan, I was actually very pleased with that hire, and I was very happy to be corrected. So, I would say that was one instance which is not exactly in line with, this was about me mostly facing a challenge with or trying to reject someone that my team or a bunch of people had already recommended. And that's where I think I stood corrected, and I'm glad I kind of gave in to that one. The second piece was this was years ago, I would say, where I was searching for a very important client partner within my organization, someone who had to manage several hundreds of millions of dollars of P&L. This was when I was on the other side of the table, and there I selected someone internally. But the person I selected internally had never been in a sales role or an account management role or a client relationship role. In fact, he was from a program management track, right? Always managing large, complex programs. And I felt very strongly that that is probably what we need of a client partner. I mean, anyone can learn P&L and chase revenue and numbers and all that stuff. It's an art for sure, but that's where I'm sitting, and I can always give that guidance, and very quickly they can come up to speed. But what I could not get together is someone who can be very consultative to a client, someone who could actually understand their needs, someone who understands the technology very well, and someone who can empathize with what the needs of the customer are from a technology, from an application, from a product engineering perspective. And I was very, very clear that this is the kind of a person I needed. And I got tremendous amount of pushback from my own bosses and so on and so forth, saying that, no, this person is a program manager. How is this person going to, I cannot afford to endorse this, putting this person in front of a client to manage a P&L, and, you're going to have issues with growth and those kinds of things. And finally, they gave in, and I put that person in place, and that person was a hit, right? Clients were so happy with that individual that, if anything, my revenues only grew. We got more clients in this particular person's region, and I was really happy in my own mind that something that I stuck to worked, because I strongly believed in that person, and I believe in my conviction of that. So these are, I would say, two situations where I know you wanted only one, but I gave you two. But these are kind of a little bit changing or different situations, but both are kind of interesting. One was external hire, one was more of an internal transition.
I think those are really insightful stories in a way that what I heard out of what you were telling me is not just looking at this is the best way I hire, but also be willing to listen to what's going on your team, and also be willing to say, look, I had my reservations about this particular hire, but I'm I'm in it. I'm here to absorb what the team's trying to tell me. And in the end, I think you benefited tremendously for that. And I think as a leader, that's always going to be a hard balance to have, right? Do you have strength and conviction, or do you have strength and conviction of your team, which led you to further success that you may or may not necessarily see through had you not done that? So kudos and comment, like I think that's very well to be respected as a leader, and that's really hard to do and do well consistently.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for those kind words. But yeah, it's, hiring people is never easy. And, I've seen people getting hired, and then people suddenly realize that, oh, this is a wrong person, right?
Yeah.
And try to avoid that because it's a lot of turmoil for both the company and for the individual. So I try to do as much as we can, or as much as I can at the the initial stages, and it takes a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, we try to make it work.
Lovely. I was going to ask you a third question. I don't know if we're still running late on time, Somer. Could we go for it?
Go for it.
Okay. So let's say I've got a scenario for you, Sudeep. If you were to receive, say, conflicting feedback from multiple interviewers about a candidate's suitability for a position, right? Not like your earlier example where it was you and then everybody else was aligned, but let's say it was a mixed bag. It was three yeses to three nos, right? How would you reconcile these different perspectives to make that hiring decision?
The quick answer um, is that first of all, if you have conflicting opinions on a particular candidate, um, you have to go with the broad majority and make that call and finally go with the majority. While the final call is always with the hiring manager, whether it's me or with someone else, but the point is that I strongly believe that you have to go with the broad majority, just because you don't want that candidate to also come in and get into a situation where they're not getting the right collaboration because they were never the first choice or the second choice. They were never there. So it's important to go with the majority. Having said that, this problem arises only when you have a set of interviewers that are all looking for the same thing.
Mm.
And that is why it's important to make sure that if you are the hiring manager and you want a bunch of people to interview the candidate that you want to hire or the position you want to hire for, I would say get a panel of interviewers, or different interviewers that bring in different aspects or perspectives to the particular position and to the role, because then they would focus in and hone in on a particular characteristic or an ability or capability of that individual, rather than everyone trying to evaluate that person on the same thing.
Mm.
So this conflict of opinion you're talking about only arises when you don't take into consideration that, hey, what kind of people should be interviewing this candidate? And that's where you always get into this problem, because everyone's thinks they're an expert and they're all providing opinions on the same single characteristic. And then you're like, okay, but no, if you have people with diverse thoughts and looking at different things, that's where you can say that, oh, okay, I have an opinion on this, so maybe I should watch out for this particular ability. Yeah, the person's great, but has got listening skills are not great. Then you got to focus. Okay, that's a caution for me, and I got to figure that out. But then you go ahead with you make your decision, but you at least have a varied and valuable opinion from different. It's not conflicting, right? So I would say this is how I've typically approached it, and it's always worked out for me, because I've had different people in different areas interview an individual, and they all come up with their own thoughts, right? And for me, that is never conflicting.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I love that answer and these stories that you shared, Sudeep. And I think there's a few good takeaways here, through everything you've shared. And even in the beginning when you talked about that heavy hitter, and I've heard you say that before, but just that impact, and will this person be disruptive? And just thinking of every single hire as really solving that, right? And getting the org farther ahead versus just fill it quickly with anybody that can do it. I just like the heavy hitter approach and someone who can really think differently. And I loved hearing all your stories about when you fought for that person who didn't necessarily look perfect, but they were a hit and they were great. So there's a lot of goodness in that. And yeah, I've always, like I said in the beginning, just the way that you run such a thoughtful, smooth process has just always really stood out with who you get involved, what they're covering, how you get feedback, how you prepare them for the meetings. Like, honestly, that's not always done well. And it's something that I think just helps you attract the best candidates and close searches faster. So kudos to you and sharing. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with all of our listeners here today and with us. And yeah, it was just really great seeing you here today again.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thanks a
All
lot,
right.
Sam.
Thank you.
Thank you.